Okay, so I'm going to give, well, we've called it a workshop. It's more of a presentation, maybe, and then with some questions and some conversation after it. It's titled Creative Inputs as Parametric Space, although I changed the title to Natural Input as Parametric Space, Algorithm versus Hand. And it's mostly about Pensado mano, which was the project I launched a few months ago, exploring FX params and in a different way as it was conceived, with many mistakes and many problems, as some of you probably already know. But this workshop is more about this idea that with FX params we got, although we didn't know at that time, we got a new opportunity to really design our own interfaces and to let collectors creatively interact with our work in different ways. Okay, so I hope you are seeing the presentation, hopefully. Okay, so this is the title, Natural Inputs as Parametric Space. And it's the third workshop, of course, framing this FXHACKATHON, which is running and whose deadline is for the 4th of August. Let me check if someone is saying something. Okay, we can see it. Okay. Okay, yes. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to somehow introduce a bit the reasons why I created this Pensado mano project. So what was my attempt and what the meaning behind it, the justification somehow. So as we all know, the broad definition of generative art is that of an artwork which is generated, at least in part, by some process that is not completely under the control of the artist. Of course, this is a very broad definition, and as many have pointed out, it does not lay down just what sort of generative process is in question or what counts as being outside the artist's direct control. And it's also silent on the extent to which the processes concerned may have been deliberately molded by the artist before losing the direct control. If we look at the history of generative art, and I've been reading some articles, doing some research about it, we will be able to find all kinds of generative systems, such as these pictures that you're seeing here. Generative systems that go from really analog machines, sometimes even, for instance, this partiture in the half part of the image is Mozart's composition, where he used a dice and he explained how do you need to use the dice to create the composition. So if we look at history, we will find different kinds of processes, from analog to subconscious, like the surrealist automatic writing and automatic painting, to more evolutionary approaches that nowadays are connected to artificial intelligence. And we see some of these here. These, of course, these historic cases or historic examples also include the very few historic figures that we know best in connection with the recent boom of generative art, and that have been regarded as the first wave of generative artists by many blockchain generative art enthusiasts. I'm speaking, of course, of artists like Vera Molnar, George Nees, Michael Knoll, Prever, Nake, Herbert Franke, and a few others. These have been mostly regarded as fathers and mothers of generative art as we know it today. But actually, if you look at them, interestingly, these artists do not only share their love for computer generative systems, but also share a certain aesthetics, which is very linked to minimalism and to some branches of modern art. So what I'm trying to say is that these are not the only fathers and mothers of generative art. They are probably the fathers and mothers of generative art in the blockchain, but that's not exactly the same. In any case, beyond this aesthetically biased history of generative art, I want to advance to more contemporary examples. So in 2019, with autoglyphs, and a bit later in 2020 with the creation of art blocks, generative art has started to rise in the heart of decentralization and crypto maxis. This is basically because the blockchain and the creation of non-fungible tokens were like the perfect match for digital art, in the sense that they offer a trustless way, decentralized way of indicating ownership of digital assets. And beyond that, which is maybe the reason why generative art became so important in the blockchain, because you can really you can really guarantee ownership and trading. But beyond this, generative art is also generated by code, which means that this code could potentially store directly on chain. So I think these two reasons are the two main reasons for this recent boom of generative art in the blockchain. And with this generative art in the blockchain came the idea of long form generative art. What is exactly long form generative art? Of course, all of you know what this is, but this was put forward by Tyler Hobbs in an article in 2021, I think. He was the first one to, as far as I know, to suggest this taxonomy, to call what it was happening in art blocks, to call it long form generative art. If you think of the examples that I showed previously, we find always artworks where artists have let out somehow a certain degree of control. However, in these artworks, these have often been selected by artists themselves from within an enormous set of generated iterations. Or in other words, artists let go of control and seek for emergence, somehow, these previous examples, these historic examples. But at the end of the day, they still selected the good outputs to be hung in the museum. And this is the main difference with long-form generative art. In long-form generative art, the artist does not pre-select outputs, letting go also of the control in this part of the process. In this article, The Rise of Long-Form Generative Art, Tyler Hobbs explains the important consequences of the fact that the artist is not selecting the output. Because of this, long-form works need to be carefully designed to allow for enough variety while still maintaining consistent quality, which introduces a whole set of new problems that these previous fathers and mothers of generative art did not really have. And in any case, the work at the end results from an interaction of the rules set by the artist and the randomness set by a hash, and that's why FXHACK is called FXHACK, I suppose, that is generated at mint. It is in this way, long-form generative art is like a lottery ticket, which also, I think, explains a bit some of the market dynamics and related processes behind this phenomenon of generative art in the blockchain. Okay, so that was long-form generative art, which has been mostly what we've known in art blocks and in FXHACK for these last years, and what we've all come to love so much. However, in this a few more months down the line, in September 2022, I think, yes, Tyler Hobbs again popularized a new mechanism for generative art drops on the blockchain, which is very different from long-form generative art. And I say he popularized it because collector customized artworks were not invented by Tyler Hobbs, of course, and there were already many projects and examples exploring this path, particularly in the artificial intelligence art community. But of course, Hobbs being the most famous generative artist, contemporary generative artist, with this project, which was a different approach, had a very big impact. And I'm referring, of course, to this project that you see on screen, which is QQL. And with QQL, Hobbs opened his algorithm's parameters to be tweaked by collectors previously to mint. The public drop consisted of mint passes, what in FXHACK we've called mint tickets. And Tyler Hobbs with Dandelion created a custom interface that you see here in the image, where collectors could experiment with this parametric space and experiment and then mint their favorite outputs. This was, of course, a stunning success, at least see it in economic terms. Although I think it quietly introduced a set of consequences that few people have pointed out. The first one is that I think that this cannot be called long-form generative art anymore, at least in the terms described by Hobbes in 2021. Because here the artist doesn't need to ensure a consistent quality and enough variety when the algorithm functions autonomously, because at the end, collectors are selecting the outputs and are the ones who are somehow guaranteeing the quality of the collection. Connected with this, it comes a second point. Now the collector is responsible of selecting and minting iteration. This means that on the one hand, the collector feels pressure somehow to mint good iterations, particularly when the price point is 10 ETH, as it was in this case with QQL, which was like $30,000. And this pressure that the collector feels when he or she has to decide which one to mint, I think explains the proportion of mint that is still today between minted passes and mint tickets. If you browse through the collections in OpenSea, you will see that only 25% of the tickets of the passes have been transformed into artworks, proving I think this collector block that you feel when you really have the pressure to mint a good iteration. That you feel when you are confronted with an open parametric space. This is what I'm calling this artwork. And on the other hand, the artist now cannot be made fully responsible for the final outputs, which arises, of course, some questions on authenticity and authorship that I think also explain QQL's floor price, especially the difference of floor price between the minted iterations and the mint tickets. At the same time, apart from these two negative points that I just pointed out, I think this new approach, this open parametric space approach, also creates a lot of opportunities, and mainly the opportunity of co-creation, of collectors participating directly with the artist in creating the final outcomes. It's like people collaborating with the artist in the creative process, and this is why I'm calling it co-creation. This means that people now become somehow parametric artists, and this is in Twitter. If you look at it, people creating QQL feeds are calling themselves parametric artists. They are becoming like experts on QQL's algorithm and its parametric space, and they are even selling the feeds that they create in a marketplace that was designed by Hobbes and Dandelion also. Nonetheless, I think in this, and especially in QQL, the parametric space is so wide, so extensive, so wide and complicated that one really needs to become an expert, as mentioned. And with only 250 redeemed passes, I don't know if we can call QQL an artistic success. I think it is undoubtedly an economic success for the artists and for the people who created the interface, but I don't know if it's an artistic success because only 250 passes have been really transformed into artworks. So still more than 700 artworks have not been produced. After QQL, many other similar approaches have been introduced by different platforms. For instance, the case with Bears. Bears has a mechanic where collectors can pre-select outputs from generative algorithms and then mint those outputs. And this generation, of course, is very different than QQL because it's completely random. So basically, the parametric space is not open, and collectors, what they do is only click the generate button hundreds of times until they found the output they want to mint. In any case, even if the parametric space is not open, I wouldn't call this long form either, since there is someone selecting the final outcomes. the final output, which is not what happens in long-form generative works. I believe this is also co-created art, even when the co-creation does not really depend on expertise, just on taste and time, I suppose, and randomness. And then we also have FX params, which is similar to QQL, which was before similar to QQL in many regards. And I'm not going to explain it here because I suppose you already know about it. Suffice to say that FX params allows for QQL type projects on FXHACK. However, my criticism, well, maybe not criticism, but my thoughts on both QQL and FX param still stand. On the one hand, I think the beauty of long-form generative art is lost in some way because the randomness, because the artist lets go of the responsibility to ensure the consistency of the output, and this randomness, when the collectors have so many, when the parametric space is so big, so they have infinite possibilities to work with, then randomness is not so important, which in my opinion is like the main source for generative art. On the other hand, the point two, as I think Peter Pasma is going to explain in the following workshop next week, these parametric spaces are often too extended, giving too much freedom, if that's even possible, to collectors, and then blocking, I think, their creativity. And this is because I believe that creativity can only really flourish within a predefined set of constraints that has to make sense, and that has to be limited enough for collectors to be able to explore most possibilities. I think one slider is cool and can work very good, but when you have 10 sliders or 100 sliders and also 10 seats or 1,000 seats that you can choose from, this becomes really crazy. It's impossible to manage. So it really, I think, blocks your creativity. Sometimes you just hit random because you prefer a random output than this pressure of really finding the best output from within all these possibilities. And the third point, and this is in the description of Pensado mano, is that I don't really like sliders a lot. So I think these ways of interacting with an artwork are maybe not like, they can be improved, let's say like this. Okay, so what alternatives can we have to these two models, to these slider QQL type parametric spaces? This is probably, well, this was before FX params. It's a co-creation experiment combining generative art with artificial intelligence. And here I try to somehow overcome some of these negative points that I just pointed out. I created this project, FXHACKATHON, for the first FXHACKATHON anniversary. And here what happens is that a set of 365 simple rectangle compositions were randomly produced by the algorithm. Then after these 365 compositions were produced, the collectors could access a site that we designed together with a friend, where they could use these compositions to create their own artificial intelligence cities. In a way, I thought this approach ensured that randomness was still a very important factor that predefined the constraints with which the collectors needed to work when generating the cities. So you get a random composition, and that's your base, your source, with which you need to then create these artificial intelligence cities. But this randomness, which is, I think, the source of generative art, or it should be the source of generative art, it's still maintained in this process. And on the other hand, the parametric space, the parametric input was really very simple. It was just natural text with which the collectors described the city and fed to the AI model in order to process the given composition into the desired cityscape. So it's only one input. So you get this base composition as random as your constraint somehow, and then you can describe what you want to get, and the model will use this composition to create your city. This was also coupled with a community creation process and the subsequent minting of the best selected AI cities, one AI city for its generative token. And I think this example advances some of my ideas or my vision, if I can say it like that, on the possibility of co-created generative art, which still aligns with the values of the long-form generative art that we've come to love. So my ideal co-created generative art would look something like this. Collectors are randomly given a very limited set of constraints with which they need to work, effectively finding the perfect input in order to complete the artwork. And I think this is probably the most important point. That collectors really have to work within a given framework with constraints, which offers some constraints where they can then explore the space creatively. On the other hand, I think the interaction with the artwork and with this open parametric space should be self-explanatory somehow. It should be also engaging and consistent with the artistic vision of the work, so it should make sense. I don't think all work should have open parametric spaces. You should only have an open parametric space if you really have a good reason for it. And these 2 points together mean that probably each of these artworks might need to create a custom minting interface instead of a generic one, and a minting interface that will use sometimes not only sliders but other ways of inputting information. And here's where Pensado mano, more or less, after this. So this was what I was thinking when I created Pensado mano, which was an attempt more or less to respond to these 3 questions. However, in this case, using the previous FX params before the update, which was definitely not designed for what I tried to do, and this caused lots of problems. But at the same time, it was also the reason why the update happened. So it was also positive at the end. Pensado mano was coded on very quickly on a weekend, basically, and launched at the worst time of our current market, as you all know, with 999 supply, which was crazy, and which minted out quite quickly, because I thought it will be there for weeks, and it was only for a day and a half or so like that. The project explores the intersection of generative art with hand drawing, and this is of course because I'm an architect and I love drawing and I love sketching, and this is like part of the tool that I use every day for my creative practice apart from coding. So I wanted to explore how these two could come together in an interesting way. The collector in this project, by drawing a predefined number of shapes on canvas, creates a unique handcrafted seed somehow that generates the final artwork. This hand-drawing seed or these hand-drawing lines, as you are seeing in the video, was the only customizable param. So you didn't have really slider. Well, there was a slider, but that's for a different reason. But mostly this was the only thing that you could do. Just you get your artwork and you draw on it, and this creates the final outcome. So it's a single param thought by hand somehow, which interacts with various random attributes that produce a unique composition like this. As I said, there were 999 tickets available, and out of those, more than 850 have been minted already. And I suppose that's because of the price was really low also. Minted with hand-drawn seeds by many members of the FXHACK community that have been exploring and having fun with the project, which was the intention behind the project, to have fun at a time where where we were all a bit scared of the market and the things that were happening. And out of this bunch of people that interacted with Pensado Mano, there are of course a lot of artists also from the community, which have created some of the most interesting outcomes, I would say, output, I would say. However, the results, at least for me personally, they were a bit unconvincing. The fact, and you can see why here, I think, in this instruction video, the fact that params was not really designed for this kind of approach before the update means that the minting instructions were not really self-explanatory, as I said a few slides ago, and really required some trained input by the collector. This has resulted, and you probably know this, on many broken tokens that have created many confusion in the community. Yeah, so, well, okay. On the other hand, so it was not very convincing or not very successful because of it was very difficult and it created lots of problems. But also on the other hand, because I probably trusted collectors to draw the seeds within the ethos set up by the project, and probably I gave too much freedom regarding how their hand drawing was translated into the final outcomes. And this produced sometimes really fun outcomes like the one in the left, or maybe the one in the right, but also sometimes some insulting ones with, as you can see, in the middle. So this was a bit also my mistake in the sense that I gave maybe too much freedom, or the translation of the hand drawing to the final work is maybe too literal. In this article, I've technically explained how did I record mouse movements and how do I store them as a param, as an FX param. However, it's important to note that the last params update has introduced the ability to update params directly from code, meaning that this article is a bit outdated. Maybe I will update it now, and meaning that this strange input is not required anymore for a project like this, and this is why we have this hackathon, because now it's possible to create your own minting interfaces and to let collectors interact with your artwork in a more creative ways, more natural ways, I would say. So I've uploaded the code. So this is the updated version. I don't know if I have to click. Yeah, this is the updated version and how it works. Now it's much more simple. You just draw whatever you like, and you would just need to press mint. And this is not the case here because this is not the minting interface, but it's the FX lens interface. But now it will only be like drawing and clicking mint without the need to copy anything or anything like this. However, this update to FX params, I think it's not completely perfect. So I also wanted to use this opportunity to maybe request new features from the team. I think my first point that it's important to have some randomness that then defines the constraint. It still cannot be addressed completely. Of course, I would like because when you get a mint ticket, you can only link randomness either to the final outcome, final hash, which you don't know which will be, or to the minter wallet. And this means that if you really link everything to the minter's wallet, every wallet can only mint one because it will get the same basic randomness always. So even if this cannot be addressed completely with a params update. I would really like for tickets to come already with some path per ticket, maybe something like this, where you can base your random over. Okay, but this is only a wish. And here, so this is more or less the story behind Pensado Mano, behind the project, and behind its meaning and my intentions when I designed it. However, of course, this is only one way in which the new FX params update can be addressed, can be used. And only one way in which these 3 points that I explained can be addressed. So now I think, or at least because I'm also part of the jury for this hackathon, so you have more or less what I would be looking at when addressing the entries. And I would really like to see how you solve these things, no? How with new ideas, with new approaches. So now, so this is the end more or less of the presentation. Now I can, if you want, enter in technical details of Pensado Mano, but I think I uploaded my code to GitHub, or so I think that's enough with a lot of comments. So I think anyone would be able to understand it. So maybe, I don't know, then I can open now to questions, or maybe later we can, on the iteration number, yes. And maybe later we can take a look at some of the params projects that were minted already, and to think of ways in which those projects could really use different kinds of input, if you want. So I will stop streaming. Okay, so I don't know if you have questions, something to say. Yes, you're saying that the iteration number can solve it, but recently I asked to the team if we can read the iteration number, no, if the mint ticket number, in order to base our randomness on top of it, but they said that you cannot do it. So actually you don't know which is your iteration number before you mint. So this really doesn't solve the problem, I think. But maybe I'm missing something here. Yes, exactly. Yes, but potentially if we could read the mint ticket number, then we could do what I was trying to do. Yes. Questions, complaints.
I think we have a
Okay,
question coming up. Deus Poeticus, I've invited you up to speak. Or maybe not. Maybe it was a...
maybe not. Okay. So maybe, I don't know, I can go through some of the projects recently minted. He's typing. So well, maybe you can ask the question there. Okay. They are typing some questions. I think you were the first one to use the collector curator approach, no, Melissa? Or yes, I think so. Maybe not. And do you find the final collection represents your vision on the collection, or were you expecting different set of mints?
Now I could accept it somehow.
Okay, go ahead. Where you want?
Hello. So I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
All right. So thank you for this beautiful and clear presentation. It was very easy to understand. So the question is actually coming back to the definition of creativity that you presented. Back then, I thought that the hallmark of a good generative project was the diversity of output. But now I'm thinking that, like, probably with the params, that goes especially for params, we will look rather for diversity while maintaining a consistent style, because diversity isn't necessarily always equal to creativity. Do you agree on that point?
Yes, I think probably yes. It's a bit. Yes, when you design a long form, you really need to make sure that the algorithm autonomously can produce enough variety. While with when you design a params project, the variety is really guaranteed probably by collectors somehow, because they can produce as many as they want and they can choose from them. So maybe so, yes, you're probably right that consistency becomes very important, I think, with a params project, in the sense that it also shows how you really had a strong enough vision for everyone to understand and for everyone to align, I think, in the same direction of what you wanted to attempt. I would say this. I would say that a good params project would not create too heterogeneous results, but it will create results that are more or less aligned with what the project wanted to be somehow. I don't know if this makes sense, but
Yes, thank you. I also I've been also thinking that maybe with params we will look more for, of course we are speaking more about user experience rather than the diversity of the output. So when we look back to a classical, let's say conventional FXHASH project, we check the outputs, right? And then we look for diversity. But in a params, in a newer, more let's say quote unquote contemporary, in this sense, params project, we will speak more about the user experience you know, like the individual experience that each collector gets, rather than the diversity of the fixed outputs. Yeah.
Yes, I think you're probably right that the collector experience is important in the sense that it's part of the, because when people collect long form works, I suppose it's for the joy of having them and trading them and etc. But for FX params, I feel that this trading aspect is not so important. And especially if you look at QQL and related projects, you will see that trading, the secondary volume is not so high. Because really what's important, at least for me, is how the person interacts collaborates with you when they are co-creating this work. So probably I haven't thought about that in this sense, but probably user experience in that sense is very important with a param project. So because the collector has to really gain something also in this interaction, I think.
Yeah, even if I don't collect, let's say, Pensado or Mano, I can still, you know, get the user experience by exploring the params, even if I don't collect it necessarily. So yeah, that may change things. So yeah, that was broadly the question that I wanted to evoke. So thank you for this excellent workshop, and have a nice day.
Thank you for the question. Also, the Imasis pointed out that using iteration number, because now with the params update, we can also use the iteration number for maybe create other sets of artworks like Kat has tried with these circles, I think. It's true that it can start generating some problems. I've also argued this. For instance, you can say that only the last one would be black, for instance, and then you can reserve that one for your friend, and this can create potentially some problems. But I also think at the end, if you don't trust artists, you have to trust artists, but because even if the collection is already finished and sold and everything, artists can always destroy it by, for instance, publishing the same thing in other place or these kinds of stuff. So at the end, artists have to be trusted somehow when you collect their work. Yes, but in that sense, I agree that it's not it's also not long form artwork if you really use the iteration number, because you're already selecting outputs in somehow. Okay, maybe more questions. We have a few minutes. I was going through these outputs to see the last ones because people have been really improving, I think, understanding the thing. Yes, but you really get lots of heterogeneity. What I did now for the revision of the algorithm, I made it a bit more artsy in the sense that it doesn't really translate your feed so directly into the work. So, for instance. So there are more constraints. It's always inside this frame. It doesn't go outside this thing. But this was just as a test to really see if params was easy to, if the new params update was easy to use. And you still need this slider because of the problem we've been commenting, that you cannot really, if you only have a single seed here, then it's always the same base for the same wallet. So it creates a problem. But now it's a bit more. matching. No, but it would be really nice to hear your thoughts. For instance, I selected 4 projects, 4 params project with a very wide parametric space. So I don't know, maybe think about how could we do this, but interacting with the artwork directly instead of using this very complex set of parameters. Maybe you can move things even with your mouse. I don't know. Could be an example. Here, this is very recent. I've already spoken about this on public a bit. I don't know. Yeah, I think this was the would be nice to have the opportunity also to mix previous tokens into one. For instance, in this collection that was a triptych with 3 different collections, maybe mix the first 2 to create the third one, something like this. Would have been interesting instead of opening the whole space. This, I think, it's a nice example. It's a fun example of params used very creatively, I think. So you just write your methods and select a seed, and the rest is completely random. So in that sense, it's maybe closer to what Bears is doing, for instance. And in this one by T. Boswell, I was thinking that maybe using the camera to generate a background image with which you then generate this texture could be a nice opportunity. Yes, I selected one from you, landline. No, yes, but that's it. You're typing. No, but mostly I would recommend you for this hackathon, if you're participating, to really propose new ways of interacting with the artwork. If you see the randomness with the line drawn. Yes, that's true, but what I wanted to do is really for every mint ticket to have a different mode, because if you check it here, so my screen again. But I think the workshop is finished, so you really can go if you don't want to enter in this discussion. But no, I shared the wrong thing. So what I wanted to do, landlines art, is really to have, so for every mint ticket to have one of these, I'm calling these here pages, but for instance, your mint ticket is like this. So it's the freehand mode, and it asks for 4 saves. So with this, so you can only work with this. So it's before the mint happens, what I'm trying to do. Another mint ticket would have this mode, which is the teach mode, where you have to draw a center shape. This other mint ticket will have this, and with this, so your mint ticket already has the randomness with it, and you just work with this base to create the artwork. That was what I was trying to do, in order to have different kinds of different types of work. Okay, I think we're finished. Cosimo, I don't know if you want to say something. I would just want to say thank you to all the people who came to listen, and I would wish you the very best luck with the hackathon if you participate. And of course, I would really push you to participate, because I think it's a nice opportunity to push the field further and to explore what FX params could mean for the generative art space.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandro. Those are really great words, and of course we feel similarly. We really appreciate the presentation that you've just given. It was awesome. Yeah, so thanks everyone for attending. This has been a really nice time together, and we'll see you at the next and final workshop.